This is part 2 of our ladder unit. Very important unit for safety professionals because there are so many injuries, incidents that involve ladders. And we are talking a little bit about stairs in addition to our focus on ladders, but most of the problems that we're going to see, most of the incidents that we're going to run into as safety professionals involve ladders, not stairs. In this is part 2 of the units. In this part, a lot more pictures. I'll use pictures to illustrate some of the points that were discussed in part 1 and the additional points that are presented in part 2. First picture. If I were in class, I would ask you what's wrong with this picture. There are a couple of things. One is just it is just a worker that's not focused, not paying attention to the ladder at all, the setup at all. It's just, once I point it out, if you haven't noticed it already, you're going to think, how in the world can they be so oblivious to this problem? The ladder is set up upside down. It's an extension ladder, and we know it's set up upside down. The feet are up here. You can't see the feet in the picture, but the feet are up here, and he's got the other end of the ladder down in the dirt. Not good. But the reason we know this is because of the hook mechanism here. Again, extension ladders will have a hook mechanism that locks the ladder into position. Once we extend it, it locks into position with this hook mechanism. It's upside down. It should be oriented the other direction. So the worker's got the ladder upside down. That's the first problem. The second problem is, once they get to the top of the ladder, where are they going to go? They're stepping into a hole. The landing area. Again, the landing area is that area where you step off the ladder onto a roof or a scaffold or whatever. It must be clear and safe to step off into that area. Well, they're stepping off into a hole. The work platform that they have here is not fully decked. Let me get some of my marks out of the way here. But that's just a no-brainer. You'll see stuff like this as safety managers, especially with some companies that you'll work with. If you work with a company like Kiewit, you're not going to see it from the Kiewit workers, but you would see it with subcontractors. And a challenge of safety managers, how do we address problems like these when we see them? Again, like I've said before, we don't get all belligerent, we don't go nuts, we don't yell, we don't cuss. We talk to the supervisor, we explain what the problems are, and ask them if they have any ideas to correct the problems. Put it in their court. Let them come up with the solution instead of you telling them what to do. And 99% of the time, it's going to be a good exchange. Corrective measures will be implemented. All of the problems will be corrected. You don't have to cuss. You don't have to act like an idiot to get workers, others, supervisors to do what needs to be done to make it more safe. Now, with this particular case, I'm also going to talk to the supervisor about doing some ladder training. Ladder training is an important part of any safety program. And this is for general industry, this is for construction, this is for every workplace. Workers need to learn how to use ladders properly. And a lot of those workers are going to think, this is silly, don't need to do ladder training. I know how to use a ladder. But you need to make sure that they understand the importance of setting ladders up correctly and having a safe landing area to step into when that ladder is being used. And that's what I would address with this crew that needed some retraining when it came to ladder usage. These are some real common problems that we see with step ladders or A-frame ladders. A-frame ladders are not designed to be used as a straight ladder. They've got the ladder folded up, they're leaning it against the structure. They're not designed for this. You see it a lot. It is an OSHA violation because the ladders are not designed to be used in this way. These ladders should only be used when that spreader bar is locked into position. And not the worst thing you're going to see in a factory or construction site, but it does need to be corrected, and we need to do some ladder training. We need to talk to the supervisors, talk to the worker, be nice, explain to them why they can't use the ladder in this way. Now this over here on the right is more serious. They are what I call overclimbing the ladder. Overclimbing. They're climbing too high up on the ladder. They're not on the top cap, but they're too high up on the ladder. They need a taller ladder, or probably in this circumstance what would be better would be some type of aerial lift that could get them up into that work area safely. They would be protected by handrail all the way around. I've got what I call the belly button rule. You're not going to find this in OSHA, and I haven't heard any other safety people talking about the belly button rule. Belly button, that's the slang term for the navel. I teach workers to keep their belly button below the top cap. I have top rung here, but if it's a step ladder like this, I train them to keep your belly button below that top cap. If it's an extension ladder, keep your belly button, your navel, below the top rung. That's going to keep the center of gravity lower, and there's less likely to be a fall from the ladder or a ladder tip over. And these ladders can tip over. And with this center of gravity way up here, that increases the likelihood of a tip over. That increases the likelihood of him falling off the ladder. He doesn't have anything to hang onto or grab onto if that ladder does start to tip or if he loses his balance. And this is just an accident waiting to happen. And this is the type of work circumstance that one of our graduates had to deal with. They had a worker that overclimbed the ladder, overclumbed the ladder. I don't know which one's correct as far as usage, but they climbed too high up on the step ladder. They were actually on the top cap, and they fell off, and it did terrible damage to their feet and ankles. I don't remember if it was both feet and ankles or just one, but they had to have surgery. They were off work for an extended period of time because they were misusing the ladder. That company's response, that graduate's response, was extensive ladder training, retraining everyone on the proper use of ladders. This was a general industry facility. This was not a construction site. These ladders are used in all types of businesses: retail, hotel and restaurant, construction, general industry, manufacturing, transportation, where you name it. You'll find these types of ladders. You'll find all of these types of ladders in just about every industry. And there are a lot of incidents because of this type of misuse. And this is what I mean when I talk about misusing ladders. And a lot of workers will take it for granted, don't see it as a big deal, but there are workers each year that die as a result of ladder misuse. Some additional ladder usage points. Use a ladder for climbing from a lower level, point A, to an upper level, point B. Best practice is not working off of a ladder. And both of these workers are working off of a ladder, meaning they're standing on the ladder, using the ladder as a work platform, and it would be better if they were working off of a scaffold or an aerial lift of some type. When they are working off of the ladder, they're not able to maintain 3 points of contact at all times. This is a basic rule of ladder usage. 3 points of contact at all times. 3 points of contact means 2 hands or 1 foot, or 1 hand and 2 feet in contact with the ladder at all times. If you're working off of the ladder, you're using your hands. You're not maintaining those 3 points of contact. That's going back to scaffold and aerial lift. If you're painting, if you're doing some repair work, construction work, it would be better to have an aerial lift or a scaffold. Also, where you'll see workers make this mistake of not maintaining 3 points of contact is when they're carrying material or tools up and down the ladder. Best practice, do not carry material tools up or down the ladder. come up with some kind of hoist system. You climb the ladder and then you hoist your materials up to you. You climb the ladder and then you pull your materials up to you, or your tools up to you. That's going to be a safer option than trying to carry stuff up and down the ladders. And now we see this all the time in some industries, especially the roofing industry. You'll see workers, they'll throw 2 bundles of shingles over their shoulder and they'll climb that ladder. And they're very good at it because they do it so much. But it would be better if they had a lifting device that would hoist those shingles up to the roof for them. And that is readily available. That's not something that doesn't exist. It does exist. It's readily available. And the hoist for shingles, and there are other types of hoists. It could be as simple as a bucket and a rope. A bucket and a rope to allow moving tools and materials up and down from the lower level to the upper level and back again. Watch out for overhead power lines. It's best to use non-conductive materials. Like I said before, fiberglass is the best because it's non-conductive. But most important, more important than non-conductive materials, is staying the heck away from the power lines. If you have to work close to power lines, make sure they're de-energized. Secure the ladder at the top and the bottom. That means tying the ladder off at the top and the bottom, and we'll talk more about that as we move along. That is important for safe ladder usage. By securing the ladder properly, that ladder's not as likely to fall over. It's not as likely to slip. It's not as likely to throw you off of the ladder when it falls over or slips. We have a worker here that's using an arc welder to build a shoring system. This is a shoring system for an excavation. They're using an arc welder to weld some of the steel components together. They're using an arc welder, which uses electricity, standing on a conductive ladder. They need to have a non-conductive ladder if they're going to be welding off of it. But better yet, don't be welding off of a ladder. Use a scaffold, use an aerial lift for this type of work. If you do have to work from the ladder, if there aren't any options for using an aerial lift, some type of fall protection needs to be used. And that's really challenging to come up with a fall protection system in work environments like this. It can be done, but aerial lift scaffold would be better if you have to perform this type of task. Which leads us into talking more about fall protection on ladders. If we're talking about portable ladders, A-frame or extension or straight ladders, fall protection is not required by OSHA. It's not an OSHA requirement. But if you have workers working from a ladder, some type of fall protection should be used. It could be simply a positioning device, or it could be some type of fall arrest device. As we'll see here shortly, there are specific fall protection systems that are designed to be used with ladders, ladder climbing systems or ladder climbing devices. But again, the best practice, don't work from the ladder. Use a scaffold or a man lift. Spend a little bit of extra money on the scaffold or the man lift. Spending that little extra money is probably going to make your workers more productive, and it's also going to help prevent injury. Fixed ladders. A portable ladder is a ladder that we move around. We haven't mentioned fixed ladders yet. Fixed ladders are ladders that are permanently attached within a work facility. Usually you're going to see fixed ladders in general industry. Refinery, an oil refinery, a lot of fixed ladders all over the place. Fixed ladders do require fall protection at a height greater than 24 feet. This fall protection at these heights can be provided by a ladder climbing system, personal fall arrest devices, or a cage. But there recently have been some changes to the OSHA regulations. Cages that are in use can still be used. But if the cages needs to be repaired or replaced, they must be eliminated and a ladder climbing system installed. If it's a new ladder system, if it's a new fixed ladder, it's a new installation, they have to be equipped with a ladder climbing system. You can't use cages in new construction. And here's what we're talking about with a ladder climbing system. It's what we call a vertical lifeline, which we did not talk about this during fall protection. I think I might have mentioned it, but we didn't talk about it that extensively because I knew we would be getting to this unit. This is a vertical lifeline. This is a steel cable, and it's got a cable grab device attached to that cable. The cable grab device is attached to the worker's harness, a front D-ring on their harness. If that worker falls, this device will automatically grab onto that cable and prevent that worker from falling. The worker is going to only fall maybe a foot, 2 feet at most, using this device properly. This is the best practice for fixed ladders. That is an example of a fixed ladder that we have here. And this is the type of system, the ladder climbing system, that's required on any new construction that involves fixed ladders. It has to have this vertical lifeline system with the cable grab. Another concern with fixed ladders, and this is more of a third-party liability concern. If you have a facility with these ladders attached to your building, you need to make sure that other people are not able to get on that ladder and fall off. If we have, maybe it's a group of 13-year-olds out exploring their local neighborhood, and they come up on a business that has a fixed ladder attached to the back of that business. And they think, that's cool, let's climb up there and see what's on the roof. They climb up there, and in the process of climbing, they fall. Somebody's seriously injured or killed. Well, then the owner of that fixed ladder can be held liable for the injury, for the fatality to those 13-year-olds. To prevent unauthorized access and to control our liability, we need to have devices like this. This is a gate device. That gate closes, it locks into position. It only allows people to climb up the ladder so far. They can climb up the first 5 or 6 rungs, but they can't climb up any higher. They can't get up on top of the building. This, by the way, is a cage system. I mentioned cage systems, but I didn't show you a picture. This is what we mean by a ladder cage system, which, again, back in the old days, it was a fall protection system. You'll still see it, but in new construction, you can't use cages. But if you have a cage system like this, you can use a gate system to lock off access to the ladder. Another possibility would be one of these types of devices. This device is basically a door that closes over the rungs. It makes it impossible for people to access the rungs. You close this, you put a lock on it, people can't open it up. They can't open it up, they can't get to the rungs, they can't climb the ladder. Now, of course, some of you are probably thinking, well, if somebody wants to climb that, they can climb it. That's true. If there's somebody determined to get up on top of a building to climb your fixed ladder, they can still probably think of a way to doing it. But if you provide these systems and they go around these systems, you will have liability protection. You will show that you have done your due diligence to prevent unauthorized access to your ladders. Now, if you don't have any of these devices to prevent access, then you are going to be held liable for any accidents that occur. So these are important to control your company's liability and when it comes to fixed ladders. I'm just throwing this in here as an extra. I use this a lot in training. This is just some of the ladder basics, talking about portable ladders again. Extend the ladder 3 feet above the surface, tie off the ladder at the top, secure ladder at the bottom, and here's one method of securing the ladder at the bottom. Another thing that we would do in the bridge construction business, we would drive stakes next to the ladder, drive stakes into the ground, and then we would tie the ladder to those stakes. That's how we would secure it at the bottom. As far as tie off at the top, there are a lot of different possibilities depending on the work environment. So extend ladder, tie off ladder at the top, 3 points of contact at all times. Don't use the ladder if it has any kind of deficiencies. We'll talk more about ladder inspection shortly. Never carry tools or materials on the ladder. And for every 4 feet in height, set the ladder 1 foot back from the structure that it's leaned against. So if your ladder is 12 feet tall, or let's say it's 12 feet from here to here, or 12 feet from here to here, then your feet of the ladder should be set back 3 feet. 1 foot back for every 4 feet up when using this type of ladder leaned up against a structure. We'll talk more about that. That's another important safety point that gets overlooked. And here are the walkthrough extensions again that I think are a great improvement. Not required by OSHA, but they greatly improve safety getting onto and off the structure that you're climbing onto. I wish we were face to face. This is a picture I like talking about with the class. There are multiple problems with the ladder usage in this picture. Let's just talk about them. Since I can't ask you and you can't throw out your ideas, let's talk about some of the problems. First of all, they're working from the ladders, which makes it hard for them to maintain 3 points of contact. They're working in an area where people are walking. The ladder could be bumped into and knocked over. They need to cordon off this entire area. We have a customer walking into the business. The business is still in operation, which is not a problem necessarily, but they need to take measures to prevent the ladders getting bumped into and knocked over. They're probably not secured at the bottom. Can't really tell here, but it's very difficult to secure to a sidewalk surface. Probably not secured at the top either. Yeah, here's needs the barricade around the ladders to prevent the bumping. We also have, again, this person walking into the store, they're exposed to falling object hazards. That's a liability issue for the company that's doing the work on the facade of the building. It's also a liability issue for the business. If one of their customers gets injured, there could be multiple lawsuits here. As far as solutions, I think the best solution, and I think it would work pretty well on this type of surface, would be a scissor lift or multiple scissor lifts. Bring in a scissor lift, a scaffold system. That would be a safer work platform for the workers to work off of. One other issue here with using ladders against this facade, if this ladder falls over or is not set up properly, leading to it falling over, we got plate glass. You don't want your workers falling through a plate glass window. That adds another element of danger, another hazard to this work environment. Again, I think the best solution would be an aerial lift. And I think a scissor lift would work. I think it's level enough and firm enough of a surface for a scissor lift to be used. And they're not going that high. It looks like they're working on this decorative molding on the facade of the building. Now, if they needed to go higher, scissor lift wouldn't be the answer. Maybe a boom lift of some type would allow them to go a little higher. Here's some ladder setup issues. They got ladders set up too close to, that's a retaining wall. They got their ladder right on the edge of that retaining wall. If it just slips a little bit, this guy is going to take a tumble. Here is a method for helping to set up the ladder at the proper 1 to 4 slope. Again, 1 foot back for every 4 feet of height. If you stand with your toes against the feet of the ladder, extend your arms forward, and you should just be able to grab the rungs. And that's going to have, if you have this set up here, you're going to be at about a 1 to 4 slope for your ladder. You can build ladders for the job. Maybe you need a 5.5 foot ladder, which that's not a common length for a ladder. Maybe you need a 5.5 foot ladder for whatever reason. You can build ladders, but you have to follow all the OSHA specifications for job built ladders. If workers want to build a job built ladder like this, following OSHA specifications, you should be working with them and making sure they're following those specifications. If your company has a temporary structures policy, that should be followed, and your company should have a temporary structures policy. In these pictures, we see one of the most common forms of misuse when it comes to ladders. This is a violation of what I mentioned earlier as the belly button rule. Earlier when I mentioned the belly button rule, said we need to keep our navel below the top of the ladder. We also need to keep our navel inside the rails, between the rails. They're overreaching, they're reaching beyond the rails on either side of the ladder, increases their likelihood of falling off the ladder or the ladder tipping over. That's what we have over here on the right and over here on the left. But over here on the left, we have even more going on. They're using an A-frame ladder, which is that thing. I'm surprised it's still standing as flat as they have it set up there. And they've got 2 people on the ladder, and they're both overreaching, leaning over to the left. That's just an accident waiting to happen. This is probably not likely a workplace. These might be some homeowners out doing some siding repairs or replacing the siding on a home. But you could also see professional construction crews doing this kind of stuff also, especially with smaller companies. Also, they're both working from ladders in both pictures. It would be better to use scaffold or an aerial lift if possible. And I mentioned using the step ladder as a straight ladder. That's not good. That's not what they're designed for. Now, the only thing wrong with this picture over here is the overreaching. And because he's overreaching, he only has 2 points of contact. We have a worker climbing the forms. And in this type of form structure, it's made up of, it uses what we call wailers, these horizontal structural supports for the concrete forms. The wailers are a temptation for workers to climb because they kind of look like a ladder. But the wailers are spaced 2 feet apart, and they should not be used as a ladder. If you need to go from here to here, use a real ladder. That's certainly not a best practice. Another common mistake you'll see with ladders, workers not facing the ladder at all times. You have a worker facing away from the ladder, increases the likelihood of falling. Same thing here. Then we have a worker trying to use the ladder like a stair system, and they're facing away from the ladder. Ladders aren't designed for this kind of use. Now, this is one of those workplaces where one of those adjustable stair systems would be great. But a lot of roofing companies are not going to spend the money on one of those adjustable stair systems, even though it would make them more productive. We have a ladder that's not set up properly. We have a ladder that's where the worker is over climbing. Their navel is up above the top of the ladder. Again, but as far as setup, that's not a good stable setup for a ladder. Ladders need to be set up on a stable foundation. They need to be set up so that they are plumb, meaning they're not leaning to one side or the other, and they need to be secured at the bottom and at the top to increase their stability. They're using a chair that's been turned over upside down, and they're using that as part of the foundation for their ladder setup. That's an accident waiting to happen. Over here, they're using a ladder as a bridge to climb from here to here. Ladders are not designed to be structurally sound when they're used as a bridge, a ramp, or a work platform. Ladders are likely to collapse when they are used as a bridge, a ramp, or a work platform. They're not designed structurally to carry loads in that orientation. But again, it's not uncommon that you'll see ladders misused in this way. Again, misuse, both of these, ladder misuse. These are the types of misuse, along with the other examples that we've seen, that lead to accidents with ladders. Used correctly, ladders are safe. Used like this, ladders cause injuries or fatalities. Same thing here. They have a ladder on top of a scaffold. Going back to our scaffold unit, you cannot use a ladder on top of a scaffold to extend the working height of the scaffold. They are working from the ladder without fall protection. There's no guardrail on the scaffold. Again, more scaffold points than ladder points here, but that's important as well. The scaffold frame is not fully decked. But let's go ahead and look at one more thing when it comes to ladders. Again, like I said, more scaffold points than ladder points here. That ladder that's being used to access the scaffold deck, it's not set up properly. It needs to be set up plumb. You can see the lean in that ladder. It needs to be set up so it's not leaning to the left or the right, if that's how they're accessing that scaffold platform. Some more regulations. Single rail ladders are prohibited. What do we mean by a single rail ladder? Let me see if I can draw you a picture. Some of you on your deer stands probably use single rail ladders to climb up to your deer stands. Again, pardon my drawing. That's supposed to be a straight post, but it's not very straight. But there's only single rail. Attached to that single rail will be steps. You can do this with your deer stand out in the woods, but you can't do this in an industrial on an industrial site. No single rail ladders. No chicken ladders. We talked about chicken ladders in the previous unit. A chicken ladder is kind of similar to a single rail ladder in some ways. Face the ladder when going up or down. We've talked about that. At least one hand on the ladder at all times. 3 points of contact. Do not carry anything up or down the ladder. And do not overclimb or overreach. And again, these are paraphrased. This is a paraphrased version of regulations that you find in the OSHA manual, in the OSHA standards. The ladder's too short. Worker does not have fall protection. This is a best practice if you have workers that are climbing onto and off of the back of a truck. If workers have to get up on the back of a truck, this is a great accessory for those workers. Some companies require this accessory for those tasks where workers have to climb up on the back of the truck. It hangs onto the bed of the truck. These handrails rotate into an up position. When these rails are rotated up, it provides a handrail for the workers when they're climbing on and off the bed of the truck. This device, if used, could prevent a lot of injuries. There are injuries every year where workers fall off the back of a truck. And a lot of times they fall off the back of a truck when they're trying to get off of the truck or onto the truck. Because you're talking a good 4 feet here. It's a good distance to fall, but it's also a difficult distance to climb up onto, especially if your average height, if you're 5'9", 5'10", it's going to be hard for you to climb up onto the bed of that truck or get off the truck when you're done doing whatever you're doing. Ladder inspection is necessary. They must be inspected by a competent person periodically, and that periodically means daily. Ladders with any kind of defects must be tagged and taken out of service. Before the ladder can be put back into service, it must be repaired to a condition that meets the original design criteria. Most portable ladders, it is the best practice when we have a portable ladder that has a structural defect. It's usually going to be less expensive just to replace that ladder. But there are exceptions to that. In some cases, it may be more cost effective to repair the ladder. But in many instances, it's going to cost more to repair the ladder than replace the ladder. So I recommend most of the time, if you got a bad ladder out there, just throw that thing in the trash, get it off the job site, replace it with a new ladder. And when I say get rid of that thing, we need to cut it up. We need to cut it up so it's impossible for anybody to use that as a ladder. If it's a defective ladder that's not safe for use, we need to make it impossible for anybody to use that ladder. So get out your demo saw that thing up into small pieces, put it in the dumpster. And here are the major components that we're looking for during ladder inspection. The rails, have they been damaged? The rungs, do they have any damage? And the feet, are they working properly? This ladder is missing its feet. There's no feet on this ladder. This is one that I pulled off of a subcontractor's job many years ago. And I go, guys, you can't use this. If you need help getting a ladder, you can use one of our ladders, which is not always the best practice, letting them use your stuff. You got to be careful with that. But that's what I told them. Hey, we've got a ladder for you. This thing, OSHA comes out here and sees this, you're going to get us in trouble. You're going to get yourself in trouble. So we can't let you use this ladder. It's also an extension ladder, so make sure all of the extension ladder mechanism is working properly. The pulleys and the ropes and the hooks that we have here. Everything else is missing. The hooks are still in place, but the rest of the extension mechanism is missing. But ladders that have defects cannot be used. And we know they have defects because of that daily inspection. When I say daily inspection, if we don't use our ladders daily, then anytime we use the ladder, it needs to be inspected. That would count as the periodic inspection. All right, that brings us to a quick end to this unit. Normally I would spend more time on this unit, but we are running out of time for the semester. This is our last unit. Let's just do a quick summary. Preventing falls from ladders. Proper setup. Set up at a 1 to 4 slope. Have it tied off. Have the feet staked or secured in some way. Have the ladder extend 36 inches above our landing. Step ladders should not be used as a straight ladder. Inspect and tag out any deficient ladders or any defective ladders. Fiberglass ladders are going to be required by most companies. That's what I recommend for all companies. And they're non-conductive, they're heavier duty, they're, again, along with this also, the type 1A or type 1A should be the type of ladder that we're using in any kind of industrial operation. Use those walk-through extensions, those bunny ears that I talked about in the bunny ears. As far as proper use, train workers not to carry things up and down the ladder. Train them to maintain 3 points of contact. Keep their center of gravity within the rails. Keep their center of gravity below the top rung. This is the belly button rule. Keep their navel within the rails. Keep their navel below the top rung. Don't overclimb. If you're working from the ladder, fall protection needs to be provided. Best practice is to use a scaffold or aerial lift instead of working from the ladder. And ladders are safe if they're used properly, but they are so often misused. So if you don't have to use a ladder, if you can use something else, that's your better option. Again, not always possible. All right, that brings us to the end of this unit and the end of the semester. Let me know if you have any questions.